Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm gonna give you guys time to come into the conversation. While we do that, I'm gonna play a little bit of music so we can get used to the vibe of this platform. You guys like the music, so I'll play it for you. All right, what's going on, guys? I hope you guys are doing well. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, the Black Business School, and I am. I hope you guys are having a good day. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to come into the conversation as we get started. Do me a favor, shout out your city that you're coming in from. Shout out your city, and everybody, please hit that thumbs up button. And we're gonna get started in three, two, one, and go. Today, I'm speaking with leadership expert Nicole Price. Nicole is an expert on organizational behavior. She's an expert on areas that relate to managing relationships and running companies, basically, as well as just general leadership strategies. And I called Nicole because I was really curious about this whole situation with Antonio Brown. I don't know if you guys have followed. Give me a yes or no if you've been following even today's updates on Antonio Brown. You see that Antonio Brown is kind of picking fights with everybody. He even put up a proverb, an African proverb on his Twitter that says that when the child is neglected by the village, he'll burn down the village to feel its warmth. So he's acting like a neglected stepchild at this point. And which is a huge fall from being one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL to a guy who can't even get a job right now. So let me introduce Nicole. First of all, ask Nicole, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm so glad you're having me on your show again.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. I love having you in because I like it when we take even the most ignorant topics and make them intelligent by giving some sort of breakdown to help where we can all learn from it, right? Like it's okay to be into the chaos, like it's because it's interesting to watch. Everybody likes to watch a
Yeah.
train wreck, but what did you learn from the train wreck? Did we learn how to drive trains more safely? Or is there something good that's going to happen? How do we heal from the train wreck? And that's why I think people like you really come in so that this doesn't just become a spectacle. It becomes something where we can all learn and walk away from, as better people. So let me ask you this first and foremost, Ms. Price. I know you happen to be a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs, one of the best teams in the NFL right now. And I'm sure you've been watching, paying some attention to the Antonio Brown thing. How much have you kept up with this?
I've been watching fairly closely. Now, if he's done anything in the last hour, I'm not up to speed.
Yeah, and that's what's so crazy about it is it's literally an hour by hour kind of story. It's not like something like the chances that he says something in the last hour are very high because
Yeah.
he tweets like a maniac. He I don't know. I think if they had tweeter of the year, it would be a tie between him and Donald Trump. Like just people that just fly off the handle, say whatever they're gonna say. So let's start with the tweeting right there. Okay, so you've been an executive in a Fortune 500 company. You've run your own company, Lively Paradox, for a while. You're a respected leadership coach and expert. Um, Tell me, let's start with the tweeting. What has tweeting kind of done in terms of how companies can even deal with, controlling information, from volatile people that just want to go out and tell the whole world what's going on inside the organization?
Oh, well, what I will say is that what most progressive companies are doing is signing with their employees as a part of their employment contract. Then, when we have something that's a public affairs issue, a crisis, that you are not the person who speaks for the organization. You may talk to the media, but your interaction with the media sounds something like this. We have a public affairs communications person. Her name is Nicole Price. She can be reached at this number. I'm happy to talk with you about anything else. And part of that is necessary because as organizations need to control the narrative around crisis situations.
Interesting. So, I'm trying to figure out with the NFL, what's fascinating is, with athletes, you have these individuals that are already high profile. They already have established brands. Some of them have big egos, let's just be real. And
Absolutely.
and you're an owner, manager, whatever it is, and suddenly all these people have microphones, and some of them have, most of them have Twitter followings that are bigger than the actual team itself. I'm wondering, I always wonder, why don't organizations just simply have a rule that says you can't tweet anything at all the entire season? Like you must turn off your Twitter, turn off your Instagram, all of that. Like, would that even be something that would be allowed?
Well, they probably wouldn't want to silence people completely because, let's be clear, the issue with Antonio Brown and all other crises generate business for the NFL. It's notoriety, it's information, people are talking about them, and all publicity is good publicity, really, in a lot of ways. However, when there's a crisis situation, what I would love for people to kind of shift their brain to seeing is that actually the NFL could probably still be in a position to help Antonio Brown if he weren't tweeting. This idea of you projecting out into the universe your emotional thoughts aren't helpful to you from a legal standpoint, and they certainly aren't helpful to you when you want to work for an organization. And I think that that's sometimes what people get incorrectly when they're talking about censorship and ability to say and do whatever they want as individuals. You are not your organization, and your organization is not you. So there are some things that you value that the organization doesn't value, and vice versa. Where that overlap happens is where there's a beautiful partnership. You come, I pay you $30 million, and you perform and do a great job, because the man is incredibly talented. That's why he was getting $30 million. But when we're talking about crisis situations, and let's be clear, what he is being allegedly charged for or accused of, he's not been charged yet, accused of, is a crisis situation. And the last thing you want to do in a crisis situation is to talk. Close your mouth. In fact, some of these people, I don't know if they were raised in the hood, because I was. And listen, number one code is keep your mouth shut until you have support. And I don't know. I don't understand this. It doesn't make sense to me from an organizational standpoint. It also certainly doesn't make sense to me just having grown up in the heart of a city. It's not in line with a typical city living behavior, running your mouth like this. It could get you killed, actually.
Interesting. Well, everybody, I want you guys to know who I'm talking to. I'm speaking with Miss Nicole Price. She's the author of the book. Is it The Lively Paradox? Is that correct?
Lively Paradox. Mm-hmm.
Lively Paradox. Her website is livelyparadox.com. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free to correct me if I say something wrong. I'm going off memory with your bio. It's very impressive.
No, you're good.
Okay. Good. And actually, she's going to be one of our speakers at the All Black National Convention this week in Houston. If you want to learn more and come out, you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com. Or if you'd like to actually watch via live stream, you can join our educational streaming service at allblackeducation.com. So feel free to do that, either allblacknationalconvention.com or allblackeducation.com. So Nicole, let me ask you this question then. If you are the New England Patriots and you took a chance on Antonio Brown, and then this lawsuit comes up, and there's a debate as to whether or not the Patriots knew about the suit or not before the contracts were all signed and everything.
Yeah.
But if you're the Patriots and you're kind of seeing all this sort of go down, what's going through your mind at this point? Right now when you're watching him sort of, complain and yell and scream about, what happened here, and maybe compare that, if you could, to maybe what they were thinking when they brought him in the first place.
Well, let me just say my disclaimer. I do not have the facts, right? I have not sat down with anyone's attorneys or listened to anyone's direct testimony. It has all been information that has come via the media. And if there's one thing that Black people know for sure, don't trust when the media hangs us in it, right? Like, you just have to be careful. And so let me just say that disclaimer. But if I am looking at a potential employee who is incredibly skilled, but we'll call Antonio Brown emotionally expensive, because that's what this is. When you can't get your work done without noise, that's called emotionally expensive. And sometimes someone is so good that you're willing to put up with their emotional expensiveness. So Steve Jobs, some people describe him when he was running Apple there before he succumbed to his illness, that, you know, he was considered to be emotionally expensive, hard to work with, but he was just such a brilliant mind that people were overlooking it. And what I think most people don't get, and I'm going to say most people can't quite get their heads around, is that if you are emotionally expensive, you need to be out of this world talented, because in today's rapidly moving, changing environment whereby everything gets you reamed in the media, cancel culture, you and I have talked about that before, it is better for me to have a player who is just a little bit above average, who's not going to cause me any kind of media concern, than for me to have a player who is amazing, but I'm going to have to answer questions about him every week. It's a distraction to the team. And somebody said, I can't remember who exactly said this today, but they said the locker room is a very, very forgiving place. And I have to agree with that. If you apologize, say that you messed up, go to the locker room, you're humble, say you need help, people will support you. But when you are emotionally expensive, you are unapologetic, you're still doing things, there's additional allegations coming out there. Bill Belichick is like, you know what? I've made it to the playoffs without the likes of Antonio Brown. And so you can just try to move forward without it. That's the decision I would make. And because here's the thing about the first 90 days, and I think most people are familiar with that inside organization. The first 90 days is a dating period for me to be able to decide if I want to have you as an employee and if you want to have me as an employer. Now, if you done play one game and we got all this foolishness coming out, that's when you cut your ties immediately. And I'm not a fan of termination culture, saying that.
Interesting. Well, you know, yeah, I'm a little bit confused by his behavior as well. Not a little bit, a lot confused. You know, it almost seems that you're what we're seeing in these situations is mental illness, just, you know, mental illness on full display, you know, where we can't empathize or understand what he's doing because maybe his brain just isn't working right. You know, you have NFL players with all this brain damage and everything, and it really makes you wonder because it seems like he's just unraveling and self-destructing.
If he has, you're thinking if he has CTE, maybe?
Yeah, I think he does. In fact, most of the players in the NFL have CTE. Like that's like I think that was established by the doctor that discovered CTE. They asked him and said, "What percentage of the players do you think has it?" He said, "Pretty much all of them." Like if they're, you know.
Well, he had observed, was it 100 brains and 99 of them had CTE or something like that of NFL players. You know, here's why I fall short of saying he has mental illness, because this is what I don't know. And I don't know if he has CTE either, but I do believe that the science that I saw, having watched that concussion documentary, power and power with money and this ego of skill, talent, and ability, because you're good, and now everyone around you is telling you how amazing you are, and you have a ton of money to be able to do amazing things with. It does corrupt. You know, people say absolute power corrupts. I agree with that, but I mean, I also agree with Trevor Noah when he says absolute powerlessness corrupts. And I haven't taken the time to look at Mr. Brown's life before he was a famous NFL star, but I will say that there's a pattern that we see from people who have gone from powerlessness to having these kinds of powers. What is the NFL's responsibility, and what is our collective responsibility as friends or family of these people to help them make that transition? You know, most people can't transition from sacking groceries in the store to sacking people who sack groceries in the store. Can you imagine going from kind of nothing to all this fame and notoriety and money? It's a challenge, and there has to be something that helps you make that transition. And if I'm not going to be responsible to do that as your employer, I need to prepare myself for these kinds of problems.
Interesting. So let me ask you this, you know, Nicole. So you one thing that impressed me is that you tend to have a strong understanding, or you seem to have a strong understanding of personality types and how different personality types connect. Like I remember when you were talking to me about 16 personalities and how different kinds of people interact in different ways. If you're saying the New England Patriots and you're looking at this guy's behavior, let's say it's before you've actually cut ties, but you see that he's got some arrogance, what appears to be maybe possible narcissism, something else. I mean, what personality traits are you seeing in Antonio Brown? Given that you're kind of a person that really understands different personality types, like what would you, if you're the boss, like how would you sort of not label him, but sort of say, okay, this is the kind of guy I'm dealing with. Like what things are you seeing there as a person?
Well, let's be clear. Any personality type can be a narcissist. So there's no good type and no bad type. But when I would look at him, and we have to run this through my filter that I do not like to terminate people. I think people need coaching and development. And the larger their social emotional gap is, the more support they need. But not at the detriment of the whole organization. You can't let the whole organization burn down based on the behaviors of one person. And so what I saw them doing is cutting their ties right away. But to answer your question, if I were a leader and I had someone like Antonio Brown, the first thing I would do is ask myself, who is this man and what is his story? That's where many of us go wrong. We just try to get to the work at hand. Let's try to win. If we stick to the NFL, how are you going to help me win these games? But no, I need to know, I need to be empathetic and compassionate, meaning I need to understand who you are so that I know what your strengths are and I know what your gaps are. That's leadership 101. And when I know what your strengths are, I have to try to help develop those strengths, lean into those strengths, help you find those strengths, focus on those strengths. And then everything that would be considered a weakness, I have to help you make sure that those weaknesses are not derailers. And so if you have some issue that is going to cause you a problem on the field, cause us a problem with the team, it's my job as the leader to know what that is. You and I are going to have a very clear, direct conversation about it. You are going to agree to be willing and able to work on getting those things outside of the derailer zone. If you are willing and able, then we sign a contract. If you are not willing or unable, then we don't even sign a contract and we walk away.
Interesting. Everybody, I'm talking to Nicole Price. Nicole is the author of the book, Lively Paradox. Her website is livelyparadox.com. She's a leadership expert. She understands lots about leadership, relationships, organizational management, things like that. Also, she's going to be at the All Black National Convention next week in Houston. So if you'd like to come out to Houston with us, you can get your passes at allblacknationalconvention.com. All Black National Convention, that convention is for people that want to learn, people that want to grow, people that want to network with positive and productive Black people. So if you're in that category, this is the place for you. You can watch the live stream at allblackeducation.com. Real quick, everybody, please hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please hit the thumbs up button. Also hit that notification bell. So please take 1 second, hit the notification bell, and give me a yes once you've done it. Let me know that you've hit the thumbs up button and the notification bell. I would appreciate you guys doing that for us right now if you can. Ms. Brown, I want to ask you another question then. We have a lot of people in here who are either bosses or want to be bosses, right? They're forming partnerships with other people. They're creating organizations with other people. And by the way, anybody in here who is a boss or is going to be a boss, just say something in the chat. Say, yes, I am. Say, I'm a boss. I'm going to be a boss. Whatever. All the bosses, raise your hands and speak up in the chat because we want to build bosses up in here. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a boss. Right? I even have a shirt that has employee scratched out and it says boss because I love being the boss. But, there's that saying that says, he who the crown is heavy on the head who wears it, or whatever it is. I got it all messed up, but you know what I'm saying. When you put on that crown, it can be very heavy and you get a lot of responsibility, a lot of challenges that you don't get when you are an employee. And one of the challenges is that eventually, I believe if you're a boss long enough and your company grows enough, you're gonna have a couple of Antonio Browns, on your team. Like you're gonna have some Antonio Browns, and I've dealt with that. When I saw Antonio Brown acting out, I knew the pain of the Raiders. I knew the pain of the Steelers. I knew the pain of Mike Tomlin. I knew the pain of the Patriots. I knew their pain because what goes through your mind when you have an Antonio Brown and that has tremendous talent, but their ego and their attitude is like out of control. You just want to hug them and say, "Come on, man, don't mess this up." You know, like
Don't mess this up.
think about this. I mean, the Steelers, they suck now. They're no good now. Now maybe with they would still suck if they had Antonio Brown, but you know they would probably be better than they are with the best wide receiver in the NFL or one of the top five. And you get so sad when you're like, what do we need to do to calm your ass down so we can go out here and keep winning games? And it is difficult. And in fact, I'm gonna tell you that the reason I started working with people like you, and I want everybody to know I work with Nicole. I talk to Nicole all the time. I started working with you because I realized I said, I got to find a way to see if we can build bridges so that the next Antonio Brown that comes through, we don't burn the bridge down or burn the house down. You know, because like Antonio's doing now Antonio feels rejected by the league. He's mad at everybody he worked with. He's mad at the Patriots who gave him a chance. He's mad at the Raiders who were going to give him $30 million. He's mad at the Steelers who gave him his first opportunity. And why are you mad at the people that gave you millions of dollars, right? Why are you talking about burning the house down when all these people were bending over backward to make things work with you? And so, you know, it almost makes you think, well, what do you do? I mean, if you see that, because I can tell you like this too. After I dealt with my first Antonio Brown or two, I can identify it in a second. I can see it in a second. Like if I work with somebody and let's say I put them on my YouTube channel or something, they start blowing up and getting famous and their attitude starts changing and they start talking about me and mine and my fans and my adoring public and blah, blah, blah. I'll be like, oh shit, here we go.
Here we go.
We got a narcissist on it. They're going to get drunk with power and start acting a damn fool. And that person who was once humble and sweet and kind is suddenly going to be the biggest asshole on the block. And I don't know how to deal with that. So I'm gonna form this in a question. I think that was more like a rant. So let me pull it in and make it a question. For all the future bosses in the room, what advice would you give them if they run into a really talented person that has those Antonio Brown-like characteristics where it's like, okay, it's great to have the guy here. He's going to be excellent on the team. But if he gets triggered, he might destroy everything. What do you say to people like that?
Yeah, so two things. Well, three. First things first. I want you to think about the time when you were an Antonio Brown. So as amazing and beautiful as I think I am, I have been an Antonio Brown before. Maybe not to the extent, but I have worked for an organization and a person whereby I thought I was the decision maker. I was actually a consultant, but I felt like I was the decision maker. I was moving and shaking and acting like I was the decision maker. I would get mad when things didn't go my way from a decision making standpoint. I wouldn't always follow the direction of the organization. And here's what people need to know. If you are an individual and you don't want to be a part of a group, then do not join organizations, because there's a certain amount of collaboration that is absolutely required in organizations. So number one, as a leader, think about the time where you demonstrated on Antonio Brown behaviors and how would you have wanted to be treated. Now, what I can tell you is most of my folks just agreed with me. So the people I had in my circle were agreeing with me. They were not telling me, Nicole, you're going to burn the whole house down. They weren't saying that. So one, think about when you were an Antonio Brown. Number two, I can't express this enough. Ask yourself, who is this person and what is their story? Who is this person and what is their story? We look at adults like they are whole human beings, and most adults are experiencing a lot of trauma. And when you layer on Black and male, he's got an awful lot of trauma. I don't even need to know him to know that he's walking around with a lot of trauma. And so are you willing to deal with that trauma, help him process through that trauma? Because if not, don't even take it on. Because at the first sign of trouble, if you're willing to just say, okay, you're fired, I'm not going to be able to support that. And then third and finally is, if you take someone on your team who's an Antonio Brown, don't even think about controlling them. You can't control that. You can guide that. You're just trying to keep the person out of the ditches. And are you okay with that? Because if you are not okay with that, again, don't take it on. And if you do take it on, it's going to require a relentless amount of support and development. A relentless amount of support and development. So prepare your heart. I think Antonio might still have his job if he were in California. They might have been able to figure it out. Because listen, let me tell you, the tweet that he said where he's like the NFL is hypocritical and selective in the way that they hand out punishment, you can't look at that tweet and say the man is wrong. He's right. But how effective is he? He's arguing to be right when ultimately what he wants is to be happy. And so, that would be one of my first questions if I were his coach. Okay, Antonio, you're right. So now what? Right, and ain't got that $30 million. Right, and don't even have your $10 million sign-on bonus. Close your mouth.
Well, it almost sounds even like marriage. If you think about Antonio and the NFL or Antonio and the Raiders being married, you're right. Like in a marriage, you can either be right or you can stay married, right? Like they say that, right? And I think that it takes a while to get to the point where you understand that. And I'd be curious. So you actually segued into the last thing I wanted to ask you about. I know you coach a lot of people on leadership, and you're very good at it. I can testify to that. What if you were Antonio's coach? What if Antonio? Now, mind you, if you were his coach, I would advise you not to go hang out at his house. But what if you talked to Antonio and you were helping him and you were his confidant and you were giving him advice on how to handle all of this and repair his image? Let's say it's right now. Antonio called you on the phone right and paid you in advance and said, "I need your advice." What advice would you give him?
Yeah, and let's put a pin in that whole don't go by his house because I want to talk about that. So my very first question would be to him, what ultimately is your goal? What do you want? Because sometimes people think their goal is one thing, but all of their behavior and actions are leading them towards another thing. And I think right now what his goal is, it looks like that he wants to express how unfair this is. That's what it looks like. But if I'm just using my lens, I would think that his goal would be to play in the NFL and to play the game he's been playing his whole life and to do so successfully. I'm not weighing in on whether or not he did do this thing or not. But I am saying if ultimately your goal is to play in the NFL, let's then take a look at, and I can't stress it enough, don't y'all start coming for me about how I would tell him to manage this. If I was his coach, I would be trying to figure out how to help him reach his goal. And so how can we look at other people who've been in your scenario, who have reached or attained your goal, and what are they doing? And how might you do that? What's your obstacles of keeping you from doing that? And then let's brainstorm some ideas around what would help us get closer to that. And then all of this behavior that's getting us further and further away from that, I need your commitment that we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But see, sometimes people can't handle me as their coach because I'm not here to tell you I'm not here to tell you how unfair the NFL is. That's not helpful. We already know the NFL is unfair, and you decided to go work there. So ultimately, what's your goal? My job as a coach is to help get you there. I'm not dismantling systems of oppression for the NFL when I'm coaching you as an individual. It's not helpful.
Interesting. So, and I agree with you. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of times, one thing that feeds the beast, so to speak, is when you are an Antonio Brown and you're so good at what you do and you're making so much money, you're going to be surrounded by all these people that are telling you that everything is correct, it's fire, it's perfect, it's great, that's right, screw them. And then all these people are the ones who disappear when your ass is broke, back in the projects, when you ain't got a job no more. And so I'm wondering. You
can't even call them.
We say it again?
You can't even call them. And listen, you don't have to go from riches to rags. You can just go from riches to a little fewer riches, and people will disappear on you.
Oh, yeah, we know that. Now, you said you wanted to stick a pin in the whole don't go to his house thing. Why is that?
Well, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I have a son, and I have taught my son how to be very respectful of women. in general. He believes that women are equally as smart to men. He believes in the social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. And he would, I don't believe, ever assault a woman. Now, that's my son. I got one. I know how other people raise their sons. And so because of the way other people raise their sons, I also teach my daughters that little gut thing that God gave you, pay attention to it. When your intuition is telling you, don't go here, don't go there. And I think sometimes we conflate that and make that victim blaming. No, I'm a present day realist and eternal optimist. In the present day, there are sexual predators in the world. And you have a little antenna sometimes that tells you, oh, no, don't do that. Listen to that little antenna that's telling you, oh, no, don't do that. And I'm not blaming you. I'm trying to protect you until such time as 100% of men have been trained like my kids. And they haven't been. And so why do I have to wait for y'all to do right and teach your children right and for them to act right than for me to also teach women self-defense? I think it's both and, which is why at the All Black National Convention, we're going to talk about this concept of unity, not uniformity. Both things can be true as long as we're working towards the same goal. My ultimate goal is that fewer women will be raped, assaulted, sexually molested. And in order to get to that goal, there's multiple ways to do it. One way is to teach women to pay attention to their internal intuition. Another way to do it is to teach men not to be sexual predators. Another way to do it is to think about how we going to punish people after things happen anyway. But there are multiple ways to get to the same goal. And as long as we're all working towards the same goal, unity, we don't have to all do it the same way. And sometimes when we talk about different ways besides focusing all 100% on the predator, sometimes people get upset about that. And I'm saying I'm not victim blaming. There was a woman, she started the domestic violence, the Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention. And what she shared with me is that all of her research is showing that assailants also lack confidence. If I were confident in myself and in my manhood, I wouldn't have to take it from anybody. I'm taking it so that I can exert power and feel powerful. So people who are abusing women and raping women and taking sex when a woman says no, that's a man with no confidence, low confidence. In fact, super low confidence, and he needs help. And I was like, that's an interesting way to look at that. And if somebody wants more information about that data, it was the Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention is where I got that.
Oh, wow. Well, I agree with you. I'm actually, I don't know if I told you this or not, I'm actually going to join the board of a domestic violence shelter in Inglewood, which is a part of Chicago. In fact, they're actually the organization that I'm sponsoring or that I'm raising money for by running the Chicago Marathon. And the reason that I agreed to join this board is because they have a more balanced approach to dealing with all of this, and I think it pisses off some of the hardcore feminists because they actually see it as a family issue, and the goal is to see if there's a way to bring the family back together. So they work with the victims, the predators, they work with everybody, so that they can see if there's a window to preserve families, as opposed to simply saying, it's all one person's fault, kick him out of the house, get rid of him, banish him from society, and I actually like that because I
your
think
relationship will never work again. And I try to avoid telling other people's stories, but I think this is a good place for me to tell this story. My father was abusive to my mother before I was born. There's 7 of us, and I don't remember that man. He had been rehabilitated, and so much so that my memories, by the time me and my little sister were born, of my dad were of the most caring, loving husband that you can imagine. And he took very good care of my mother and us as children. And if we fell into that narrative of cancel culture that people can't be redeemed, then I wouldn't even be here. And so I'm not a licensed therapist in this space, but I will say that this whole concept of thinking about it from that the perpetrator needs help too, not punishment. In the United States of America, we're not used to thinking of people in that way. that when somebody does something incorrectly or wrong or damaging, that that person needs help. We are trained to believe that that person needs punishment, that that person needs to be abused. In fact, it's not good enough to send you to prison. We make it so that our prisons are unsafe, and that men in prisons get raped, and that when you get out of prison, you can't find a job, and that when you get out of prison, you can't vote. And when you get out of prison, you can't even get a job in the same space where you used to work before, like as in the case of Michael Vick. And I think that there are some things that we need to reconsider as it relates to people making mistakes. Redemption is a real thing. Redemption does work. And when people change behavior, we have to give them credit for changing their behavior. Otherwise, what was the benefit of them changing their behavior?
Well, there you go. I like that. I respect that. I hope you guys understand why I'm happy that Miss Price came onto the channel today, because she provides a perspective that I think all of us should consider. And I hope you guys will join me in giving her a digital round of applause. Please tell her thank you for sharing her expertise. And I know that I'm going to cheer for you. So I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for coming through. Right? And we're going to have Miss Price back. And in fact, she is going to be joining us in Houston this week at the All Black National Convention. If you haven't got your passes yet, you should definitely get your passes. Go to allblacknationalconvention.com. And then once you're on the list, I've sent special instructions to those of you who are there about all the special sessions we're going to have. We're going to have sessions on everything from starting a business to real estate to relationships and politics and all different kinds of things. So it's a great big family reunion full of smart Black people who want to be smarter, and those who want to build and create a better life for all of us and all of our children. So I want to say thank you, Nicole. And by the way, I should mention also your website, livelyparadox.com. And your book is called Lively Paradox, right? And at the convention, you're going to speak about unity, not uniformity. And I can't wait to hear your keynote speech. So thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Take care, y'all.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.